Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hi, you are very welcome. This is Reading the Past and I'm Dr. Cat. And this is going to be our last Reading the Past video for 2024. And I'll be honest, I'm a little bit nervous about how this one is going to go and how it's going to be received. You might notice that we've got a slightly different setup. I'm at a table, I've got my laptop in front of me, and we're going to be doing something a little bit different to what I would normally do. I feel I have a little bit of license to do this because we are during the Christmas period, and Christmas is traditionally a time of misrule, where the usual rules don't apply, where things can be a bit topsy-turvy, where the ethical boundaries on occasion can be somewhat stretched. Recently, I received an email inquiring about what I thought of the use of AI in the manufacturing of history content on YouTube. And when I saw this email, I'll be honest, I was unaware of my thoughts because it wasn't really something I was aware of happening. I didn't know, I'm still not sure, in fact, if people are using AI software to create history content. Nevertheless, this email really whetted my appetite to perform the experiment we're going to perform today. And of course, this is not going to be the first time that I have experimented with AI on this channel. However, my last video on AI explored whether or not I would be able to spot a potential student using AI to write an essay. Today, though, I'm going to see if AI can potentially do my job better than me. So I'm going to ask AI to write a script for me to film for this channel, and I'm going to deliver it as if I was the one who had written it. I don't want there to be any confusion as to which part or parts of this video are AI generated, and so I will be marking the bits that are using AI very clearly on screen. I'm also going to make it very clear what prompt or prompts I have been using, and if I can, I'm going to run the AI generated script as a split screen next to the content that I have filmed. I also think it will be best for me to ask it to generate a script on a topic that I've already made a video on, so I can leave that video linked. There'll be something, essentially an older video, not AI generated, that expresses my feeling and shows my research, that can sit alongside this one, that you can watch and compare if you so choose. Before I do this, I want to make it clear that I am aware that there is a lot of controversy around AI, and indeed I probably don't know all of the aspects of the controversy around it. What I do know is that the AI-generated part of this video that I will be presenting will be plagiarised. I am uncomfortable with that. I don't agree with plagiarism, but this is going to draw on content from the internet. It almost certainly won't tell me where that content's come from, who wrote it, who is the originator of it. Thus, it will be plagiarised. Additionally, the servers, all of those rooms full of the equipment that makes AI possible, is really a drain on the environment. It is certainly contributing to global warming. And that is just to name a few things that make me uncomfortable about this kind of content. YouTube also asks creators to indicate if any part of their video has been AI generated, which obviously parts of this one, potentially large parts, will be. And I have no clue what that's going to mean for this video. I mean, hopefully it's not going to get it blocked or get me banned. I am considering all of this, but I'm also considering and mindful of the fact that AI is seemingly going to be ubiquitous in our future. I mean, take a look at this Google search. It's right there at the very top of lots of Google searches. We're being told again and again that AI is going to steal people's jobs, and maybe it will. And so increasingly I found myself wondering if AI can in fact produce a better Reading the Past video than I can. So let's find out. When it came to me producing this script, I went to my husband. He's been working with AI. Specifically, he's been working with Microsoft's Copilot in his working life. And so I really wanted to know how I could best approach this. And he sent me this advice, which I will be showing on screen, about how to construct the ideal prompt to get the most out of the AI software. He then also helped me create the prompt we're going to be using, which will read as follows. Can you produce a 1,000 word script for a YouTube content creator to use for a video addressing the question, why did Anne of Cleves' marriage to Henry VIII fail, please? Please use peer-reviewed content and cite the sources in MHRA style. Please use language that is approachable and friendly when creating this script. Now, at first glance, and maybe I'm being hypercritical, maybe I simply do not want AI software to be the thing that works. I don't want it to be something that can beat me at my own game. But I'm going to be honest, my skin is crawling here. So we've got intro. On screen, a fun animated title card appears that reads, why did Anne of Cleves' marriage to Henry VIII fail? I'm not sure what fun and animated looks like in this context. But then we move on. On screen, a humorous, exaggerated image of Henry's face when he first meets Anne. So we're getting cartoonish. This is certainly not something I would do in a video. If I ask Canva's AI to generate the image, here are the options I get. Now, I think maybe I'm going to use this tool going forward. If the script is suggesting I put images on screen and they aren't existing images, I'm going to use Canva's AI to make them. So that's going to be how the video looks. Let's see how that goes. All right, let's kick off this script. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into the fascinating history of Anne of Cleves and her short-lived marriage to Henry VIII. You might have heard that their marriage was a total disaster, but what exactly went wrong? Was it Anne's fault? Henry's? Or was it just a mix of unfortunate circumstances? Grab a cup of tea, or something stronger if you're feeling it, and let's break it down. Right, okay, I'm going to pause on this because the tone of this script is just so different from anything that I have or likely will ever produce. And as I'm going through, it's making me wonder, what if I tweak the original prompt in a way that might make this a fairer test of the AI scripting's process? So I'm going to ask it to produce something in the style of my channel, and I'm not sure if it can do so. So I guess we'll find out. So this is the tweak I'm going to make. We've got almost exactly the same prompt as you can see here, but at the end, I am adding, please echo the style of Dr. Cat from Reading the Past. I'll be honest, I may be a little bit scared if it can make a script that sounds like me, because that means it's watching, maybe. I don't know. This is all a journey for me. So it's said yes, as we can see here. Right, so at first glance, I am already seeing that there is clearly a change. Opening shot, a cosy bookline study with soft lighting. So the software's not just reading your content, listening to it. Seemingly it's also watching, because I'll be honest, I feel both seen and attacked. I am doing a quick skim, and the tone definitely feels better. So let's just jump right in, deliver this as if I'd written it, and then we'll go back and we'll fact check it after we've finished. And in fact, we'll fact check both versions of the script that I've received, just to make it fair. Right, without further ado, let's jump in. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to dive into one of the most fascinating yet overlooked stories from Tudor history, the brief and turbulent marriage of Henry VIII and Anne of Cleves. Their marriage lasted just 6 months. So, what went wrong? Why did it fail so spectacularly, despite Henry's efforts to secure a political alliance with Anne's family? Stick around, because we're going to break it all down. Now, let's set the stage. It's the early 1540s, and Henry VIII is in a bit of a crisis. His previous 2 marriages, first to Catherine of Aragon and then to Anne Boleyn, ended in dramatic fashion. Catherine of Aragon had been divorced and Anne Boleyn was executed. Henry was desperate for a new marriage, not only to secure a male heir, which he still didn't have, but also to forge strong European alliances. So in 1540, he turned his eyes towards Anne of Cleves, a noblewoman from the Duchy of Cleves in what is now modern-day Germany. Henry's advisers, especially Thomas Cromwell, thought this marriage was a brilliant political move. The Holy Roman Emperor Charles V had a strong grip on European politics, and Anne's family had a good relationship with him. Aligning with Anne, therefore, could secure Henry's position and protect his interests. But as we'll see, there were serious problems from the start. When Anne arrived in England, Henry was reportedly not impressed. Now this is where it gets interesting. It's often said that Henry was disappointed with Anne's appearance when they met in person. But what exactly happened? Some historians suggest that Henry was so put off by her looks that he had second thoughts. According to the court chroniclers, Anne wasn't the, quote, beautiful woman Henry had imagined based on the portraits and descriptions he had been shown. In fact, the artist Hans Holbein's famous portrait of Anne seems to have flattered her a bit, making her appear much younger and more attractive than she might have been in reality. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. That's so shallow. Why would Henry base his decision on looks? But here's where the story takes a deeper turn. Henry VIII, by 1540, was no longer the dashing young king he once was. He was in his 40s, overweight, and had suffered from health issues, including a serious leg wound that caused him constant pain. He wasn't exactly in the best place to be thinking about romantic chemistry, but he had already experienced the fallout from 2 failed marriages, and perhaps he was hoping for a more attractive, harmonious match. But let's not just focus on Henry's feelings. Anne, too, had her own experiences with this mismatch. Historians suggest that Anne was likely not prepared for the realities of royal life in England. She came from a relatively small, more peaceful court in Cleves, and England's court was brimming with political intrigue and tension. Anne was not fluent in English, which made communication difficult, and she likely felt isolated in a foreign land. So let's talk about the moment that really sealed the fate of the marriage, the wedding night. It's often claimed that Henry and Anne did not consummate the marriage, but there's a bit more to it than that. According to contemporary sources, Henry was physically unable to complete the marriage due to his own health problems. Some accounts even suggest that Henry was reluctant to sleep with Anne because he didn't find her physically appealing. But more crucially, his inability to consummate the marriage and the lack of any real emotional connection played a huge role in its breakdown. Historians have debated whether Anne and Henry were ever really in love, and most agree that their relationship was more political than personal from the start. As noted by Alison Weir in The 6 Wives of Henry VIII, quote, Henry was willing to marry Anne of Cleves for the political advantage, but when it came to passion, he was deeply disappointed. The situation was made even more complicated by Thomas Cromwell's role in arranging the marriage. Henry, who had trusted Cromwell to set up the match, quickly grew disillusioned with him when things went sour. After only 6 months, Henry sought to annul the marriage, claiming that Anne had been, quote, misrepresented to him. Anne, for her part, seemed relatively unfazed by the annulment. She was granted a generous settlement and even remained on good terms with Henry afterward. In fact, Anne and Henry developed a friendship of sorts after their divorce. She attended royal events, and Henry even referred to her as his, quote, sister. So, why did the marriage fail? First, there were the superficial factors: Henry's disappointment with Anne's appearance and his own physical decline. But the deeper reasons are tied to the political nature of the match itself. The lack of communication, the absence of emotional connection, and the overwhelming pressure from both sides of the marriage made it nearly impossible for this union to succeed. After the annulment, Anne of Cleves went on to live a relatively happy and independent life. She was given a good settlement, and despite her marriage to Henry ending so quickly, she remained an important figure at the English court. She was often described as being kind, charitable, and well liked by those who knew her. To sum up, Anne of Cleves' marriage to Henry VIII failed for a combination of personal, political, and cultural reasons. Henry was looking for a match that would provide both political stability and personal satisfaction, but neither of those came to fruition. What began as a diplomatic alliance ended as a short-lived experiment in royal matchmaking, highlighting just how complicated and messy Tudor politics and royal marriages could be. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you found this deep dive into Anne of Cleves' short-lived marriage as fascinating as I did. If you want to learn more about the Tudors, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon. I'll see you in the next video. A mixed bag, I feel. There were certainly some interesting moments. I thought some of the image choices were good. There were, I think, likely going to have been moments in that where you may well have been shouting at your screen, because there were some fair old clangers of errors in this. And so let's, as I said, we're going to fact check what we've got here. And we'll also run through the script, the first script, the one that I didn't read out, to see if there's any better or worse going on. So the first thing that really jumped out to me, and I'm sure to you, was the idea that Henry had two previous marriages, that he was desperate for a new marriage, not only to secure a male heir, which he still didn't have. Not quite sure what's happened to Jane Seymour or Prince Edward. I had to go and check with my husband Jamie about this, because in the past he has let me know that ChatGPT and equivalent software, it's not capable of making things up or of lying, if you will, because it's generating this information, it's generating this script out of the available stuff that it can access. He refers to blips of this kind, and let's be honest, this is a fair old clanger, as being like the software hallucinating. I don't fully understand. If anybody does and can explain it to me like I'm 5, please do feel free. Jamie has tried. I'm not sure how software can hallucinate, but that's what it's doing, he says, rather than deliberately being deceptive, if you will. What else do we have? So we have this quotation. Apparently it's in quotation marks, so I'm going to say it's telling me it's a quotation. According to the court chroniclers, Anne wasn't the beautiful woman that Henry had imagined. Now, if this is supposed to be a quotation, it doesn't tell us who it's supposed to be from. I don't know of this being any wording referring to Anne at the time, that she wasn't beautiful. I also disagree with the notion that Hans Holbein's portrait was deceptive, and I say that in the video that I talked about, that I made on Anne of Cleves, that I will be leaving linked. Next up, we've got the idea that the wedding night was the moment that really sealed the fate of the marriage. As with so much in this script, this feels reductive. It feels like, frankly, a massive oversimplification. It's ignoring, to name just a few things, that toe-curlingly awkward first meeting between Anne and Henry, where she doesn't recognise him, he tries to kiss her. It's frankly awful. It also ignores that the European political situation had shifted between this marriage being discussed, contracted, and then taking place, because the recent peace between Charles V and Francis I seemed to be breaking down. Indeed, it would do shortly after this marriage was annulled. Suddenly, the Cleves marriage is less disruptive to Henry's enemies. It makes less sense. It's frankly less valuable and less desirable. Additionally, Catherine Howard is already at court. She is brought to court at least by the time that Anne of Cleves arrives. She is there to serve Anne of Cleves, and presumably it's not going to be long before Henry pays attention to her, before he notices her and that she's there. And that's just to name a few factors that are going on. We also have this notion that historians have debated if Anne and Henry were ever in love. I'm happy to be corrected, but I must say I am not aware of anybody having that debate. I'm not aware of anybody arguing that at any point the Henry-Anne of Cleves marriage was ever a love match. We also have this direct quotation from Alison Weir in her book, The Six Wives of Henry VIII, where it says, Henry was willing to marry Anne of Cleves for the political advantage, but when it came to passion, he was deeply disappointed. Now, I can't remember the exact wording of every line in this book. I have read it, I do own it. But what I can do is I can try and do a Google book search of this text. And here is that. And as you can see, this quotation, no part of it is coming up when I do this. So I have some questions as to whether this quotation exists in this book. I think it's fair that I do have those questions. And if it doesn't, what's happening here? Indeed, if we hop down, let's just have a look at the sources. So Alison Weir's Six Wives of Henry VIII is a real book, as you can see. We also, though, have got a quotation from Robert J. Knecht, R.J. Knecht, The History of the Tudor Court. This is not a real book. Knecht does publish a book in 2004, but it's on the Valois Kings of France. The third book being listed is Lacy Baldwin Smith's Henry VIII, the King and His Court. Interestingly, Alison Weir published a book with this title in 2001. Lacy Baldwin Smith didn't. He does publish a book just titled Henry VIII, but he publishes that in 1971. This is, in some ways, for me, the most interesting and I think arguably concerning thing for anybody who's trying to use AI to plagiarise, because if you aren't careful, it tricks you. If you don't do the work of researching and seeing if the sources it's citing are correct, you're going to put things down that either don't exist or are wrongly attributed. And that is going to be a massive red flag for anybody engaging with and reading your work. In many ways, where AI stands so far, I think it's fair to say, is that you almost have to do more work to try and unpick the loose threads of quotations and sources and arguments. You are surely going to spend as much, if not more time, fact-checking the script than you would just writing it in the first place. Is that fair enough? Let me know what you think. Let's hop back to the first script and see what the facts are in that. Let's fact-check that. So what have we got? Let's pull that up. So again, we have got something that feels fairly reductive in terms of the way it's written. This idea here that Henry had been looking for a new wife for a while. Now, maybe I'm being hypercritical, very pedantic, but I think there are a fair few scholars who would point to Henry's mourning for Jane Seymour. This mourning does go on for a while. Indeed, the contemporary accounts point to a king being encouraged to look for a new wife, because while he has now got Edward, as his own life history shows, kings do ideally need both an heir and a spare. So I'm wondering if that notion of a while is something that many scholars would agree with, or this notion really that it seems that Henry is the one pushing for it and motivating it. Anne, a daughter of Cleves, seems to be a perfect candidate. Her family's well connected in Europe and they're Protestant. The faith of Anne and her family is an odd thing to boldly assert in this way, because sympathising with the reformers does not a Protestant make, necessarily. And indeed, the way it plays out, I would say the Cleves family, the ducal family there being Protestant, that's not how I would put it. Henry is apparently trying to solidify his break with the Catholic Church. Well, I think the break is solid, at least in Henry's mind. He isn't looking to solidify the break. What he is looking for is he's looking for allies to deal with the fallout from the fact that he's broken from Rome. Then this is something that's echoed in the other script, the notion that this is where it starts to get interesting. The script? History? Well, it's a weird way to word it, and it's certainly not a way that I would ever word it. Equally, just hopping back up, the discussion or desire that you should grab a cup of tea or something stronger if you're feeling it, that's just something that I would never say. I don't know what people are going through. I don't know what people's personal struggles are. And so there are a few things that I don't promote or push on this channel. And indeed, I hope it's worked, because in my YouTube ad controls, you can say what can and can't be advertised on your channel. And I specifically exclude alcohol and gambling, because I would never ever want somebody to feel triggered by something that might be advertised on my channel. So I'm certainly not going to be suggesting that people go and get a cup of booze to watch my programs. That's just not, I don't like that. We also have Henry VIII sent his trusted court painter Hans Holbein to paint a portrait of Anne. Again, maybe I'm being pedantic, but it's not just Anne, is it? Because he's also sent to paint Christina of Denmark, Louise of Guise, Anne of Lorraine, and also Anne of Cleves' own sister, Amelia. Next up, we have a repetition of the idea that Holbein's portrait is portraying Anne in a flattering light. There's a catch. When she arrives in England, Henry doesn't find her as attractive. This, I think, is inferring, arguably, that Anne does not look like the woman in Holbein's portrait, this woman. And I'm of the opinion, as I state in the video that I made previously, that it's highly unlikely that Holbein's portrait is very different from the woman that arrived in England, because he keeps working for Henry. If what he had produced was flattering to the point that it doesn't look like her at all, why is Henry not going to punish that? Indeed, why is he going to continue to reward Holbein by keeping him employed? To me, that just doesn't make any sense, and I say that in the video that I made. We have already talked about the images that are being produced. The AI generated images in this one, as opposed to the other video, the other script version, they are a lot more outlandish, shall we say. I'm much more uncomfortable with these. Suggesting that I put in portraits, that's fine. These are recognisable. There were, of course, some AI generated images that I am less comfortable with. That's not something that I'm going to do on my channel going forward. A quotation appears from Edward Hall's Chronicle. Now, not only does this quotation not pop up when you search Edward Hall's Chronicle, and I have read it, it's also not something I remember being in there. On top of this, interestingly, in a moment we'll be looking at the bibliography for this particular video script, and despite this being apparently a direct quotation, it does not appear in the bibliography. There is no reference made down there to Hall's Chronicle, which is, I think, an odd choice. Some historians argue that Henry was so displeased that he couldn't even bring himself to consummate the marriage, and this, as we know, was a pretty big deal for Henry, who was very focused on his reputation as a man of virility. Now, in the other script, there was a conversation about how Henry couldn't consummate because of his own health concerns, and likely that is what's going on. But that talked about it being the contemporary accounts discussing this, and maybe some of them were questioning it. But overwhelmingly, Henry and his doctors are reporting that Henry is very much still virile. Of course, we hear that he is having those nocturnal emissions. He's having wet dreams. So the contemporary sources are painting it as this is the lady's fault, not the king's. The contemporary sources talk about a virile Henry and an Anne that is at fault. So the full script I read is getting that wrong. This script is also getting it wrong, because historians, by and large, aren't arguing that Henry's displeasure is the reason for non-consummation. They point to his failing health. So we have got, in both scripts, a flipping of what's going on there. We have Anne, for her part, was reportedly not thrilled either, that she had trouble understanding Henry's attraction to her, as he had seemed so different from the man in the portrait. I'm not sure what that sentence is supposed to be saying. I'm not sure of the source of Anne being confused, displeased, unaware. Don't know. This script also quotes historians. We have R. Malcolm Smuts arguing that the breakdown of their marriage was also political and personal. Henry was an ageing king who, despite his desire for a younger, more beautiful wife, still had his royal duties. Anne, by contrast, wasn't as politically savvy as Henry had hoped, and she didn't have the same courtly experience as his earlier wives did. This is Smuts, 2013. What is happening here is having an argument attributed to a scholar without a quotation. But if we check in the bibliography, as we've done before, this is not a real book. Smuts published this book, Court Culture and the Origins of a Royalist Tradition in Early Stuart England. He publishes it with this publisher, but he does so in 1987. So once again, the AI is hallucinating, something to be concerned about, I feel, if somebody were, for example, to choose to plagiarise in this way. We have got another AI image. Let's see what that says. Anne and Henry standing awkwardly at a royal banquet. What does Canva AI show? What do you think of this one? Next up, there's another reference to an academic, Susan Doran, very well established, very well recognised. However, to my knowledge of her work, principally, she works on the later Tudor period into the Stuart era. As far as I'm aware, her expertise is in the Elizabethan period. Doesn't mean that this isn't something that she's worked on, or that she doesn't suggest that Henry's disillusionment with Anne went beyond just her looks. He became frustrated with her inability to speak English fluently, her lack of courtly sophistication, which made it difficult for her to integrate into the royal circle. Anne herself wasn't totally heartbroken about the situation. In fact, she reportedly agreed to the annulment, saying she never really loved Henry and that she would rather have her freedom. Absolutely no idea where that statement comes from. Almost 100% sure that it wouldn't be in anything that Doran has written or said. According to Doran, though, we have Anne's pragmatic attitude towards the marriage meant that she wasn't deeply offended by Henry's request. No idea where any of that has come from. Let's just check the bibliography once again to see Susan Doran, Henry VIII and the English Reformation, Routledge, 2010. This is not a book by this author. Doesn't exist. She didn't write this. A gentleman called David G. Newcomb publishes a book with this title, but he does so in 1995. I'm going to show you a list of Susan Doran's book. As you can see, they are principally studies of the Elizabethan period, so some hallucination once again there. Next up, something I want to bring up, she was also allowed to keep the title of Sister to the King, which was a pretty nice gesture considering how quickly everything had fallen apart. Referring to Sister of the King as a title in this context makes it seem as if it's equivalent to Earl or Duchess or something of the sort. It's not a title. She is known as Sister of the King, and that does certainly sweeten the annulment deal. It's not a title, but it does promise her a place. It promises her respect. It also potentially guarantees the funds that she's going to receive. I think that referring to it as a title, particularly in relation to the Tudor court, is confusing. It's certainly not something that I would do. We are told that Anne was invited to the coronation of Henry's next wife, Catherine Howard, and that she attended court events regularly. So she does attend court events. She is at Christmas, for example. The idea that she's attending Catherine Howard's coronation is odd because Catherine Howard doesn't have a coronation. So quite where she's going, I mean, all dressed up with no place to go, would be the words I'm thinking of. We've got another suggestion for a odd AI-generated image here. A thoughtful animated portrait of Anne of Cleves with a quote bubble that reads, "I would rather be an honest woman than a queen." What is this? Why? Where is this quotation from? I Googled it. No, certainly not Anne of Cleves. She doesn't say it. Doesn't seem that anyone says it. Don't know where that's come from. Odd in the extreme. And then we're down to the references. Well, that was my adventure into AI writing my content. So what do you think of the successes, limitations, and controversies surrounding AI-generated content? Do you think you would be able to tell if a YouTuber was using ChatGPT or some such equivalent to produce their content? And how would you feel if you discovered they were creating their content in this way? Now, I am going to be absolutely explicit. This is not something that happens on this channel, and it's not something that will be happening on this channel ever. I think I'm probably going to leave AI alone. At least I'm going to leave it alone until someone figures out how to use it to make a way to interview historical figures in a meaningful fashion, because I am definitely going to want to test that. In fact, do you think that will make a good video? As always, I'm looking forward to reading your conversations in the comments section underneath this video. Please also, would you pop an emoji or a social glyph in the comments too, because that will boost the engagement, and the more engagement video gets, the more YouTube claim they share it out, which should help us to grow our community. I think let's do something maybe computery this time, something that feels AI related. You can also find me elsewhere on social media. I will leave links to all the places you can find me on the internet in my description box. Please do follow me over on some or all of them so we can continue this conversation and start some others. I do hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, please share it with your friends. If you like the channel, let some pals know about it. You can tell me you like this video by hitting the thumbs up. Please do subscribe to the channel. And if you think you are subscribed, have a check to make sure that YouTube hasn't mysteriously unsubscribed you against your will while you are there. Checking, subscribing, maybe resubscribing, please hit the bell icon that sits beside the subscribe button and then select all in the drop down that will appear. And that way YouTube claim they will tell you when I'm next uploaded, but also when I'm next going to go live, which I will be doing to talk about the history news. You are not going to want to miss that. As a failsafe, you can also head over to my website, www.katrinamarchant.com. It will be linked. If you head to the contact page, you will see there is a little box. Put your email address in that box, hit submit, and that will add you to my list and will permit me to send you out an email once a week to let you know what I've been up to, and also to send you useful links for my content for the coming days. I hope you're going to have a great day, whatever you're doing. And indeed, as we hurtle towards New Year's Eve, I hope you're going to have a lovely time on New Year's Eve and an absolutely wonderful start to 2025. I look forward to spending some time with you in 2025 and speaking to you all in my next video. Do take care of yourselves. Bye-bye for now.